3 weeks earlier, the phone rang at 2 a.m. The sound tore through my apartment like a siren. Mom's voice cracked through the receiver. "It's your father, Elena. His kidneys are failing faster than expected." The words didn't land right away. I sat there, staring at my glowing monitor. Lines of code blurred into static. "Without a transplant," she said, "he won't make it another month." The room felt suddenly too small. I booked the next flight home before the call even ended. The family gathered 2 days later round the old dining table. The same one where we carved turkeys and laughed at burnt pies. Now it looked like a courtroom. Dad upstairs in the hospital. Mom pale, hands twisting a napkin. Lucas spoke first, eyes down. "My blood pressure's too high. They'd never clear me." Marissa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We're starting another IVF cycle. The hormones are delicate. I can't risk surgery." Her voice trembled just enough to sound sincere. Mom nodded, helpless. All eyes shifted to me. Elena, the fixer. The responsible one. The one who never said no. I stared at the empty coffee cup in front of me. It was already decided without a word. "I'll get tested," I said quietly. Mom exhaled in relief, like she'd been holding her breath for years. Lucas reached for my hand. "You're incredible, sis." Marissa whispered, "You're saving him." But it didn't feel heroic. It felt inevitable. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain hit my old bedroom window. The posters from high school still lined the walls. I used to dream of leaving this town, of being free. Now I was back, caught in the same orbit. At the hospital the next morning, the nurse smiled as she drew my blood. "Your father's lucky," she said. I wanted to believe her. Each test blurred into the next. Blood work. Scans. Evaluations. The transplant coordinator shook my hand after the final one. "You're a perfect match." Perfect. The word echoed in my head. When I told Mom, she cried and hugged me until my ribs ached. Lucas texted a thumbs-up emoji. Marissa sent a heart. No one asked how I felt. They didn't need to. I knew my role. The dependable daughter. The one who fixes everything broken. In the hospital parking lot, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. The sky above me was gray and heavy. I thought about Dad's laugh when I was little. The way he used to lift me to see the fireworks. I thought about the years I spent trying to make him proud. And how quiet he'd become when I left for Seattle. I didn't know if I was saving him out of love or guilt. Maybe both. But I knew one thing for sure. If I didn't do this, no one else would. And that truth felt heavier than any fear I had left. The world came back in fragments of light and pain. A steady beeping filled my ears before I could open my eyes. My throat burned like I had swallowed glass. Someone squeezed my hand gently. "There she is," Mom whispered. Her eyes were swollen, her smile trembling. "You did it, sweetheart, it's over." I tried to speak, but only air escaped. A nurse lifted a straw to my lips. The water tasted like mercy. My body felt carved hollow, every breath dragging through stitches. Across the hall, Dad was recovering too. His numbers were already improving, the doctor said proudly. "Your kidney's working beautifully," he added. I nodded, though pain knifed through my side. When he asked about my pain level, I lied. 4, I said. It was closer to 8. They called me brave. I called it surviving. 2 days later, they discharged me into my parents' guest room. The same blue walls I'd painted at 16. The horse ribbons still hung above the mirror. Everything frozen in time except me. Mom fluffed the pillows behind my back. "Don't worry about your father's meds. I'll take care of him." By evening, she was asleep on the couch, exhausted. I was the one helping Dad to the bathroom, his arm heavy around my shoulder. He smiled weakly. "You should be resting, Elena." "I'm fine," I lied again. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was my boss from Seattle. "Take all the time you need," he said, but his tone carried a warning. "Deadlines don't wait for family." Later, the hospital billing office called. "Miss Marsh, your insurance has processed their part, but there's a remaining balance." "How much?" I asked. $38,742.16. I leaned against the wall, dizzy. They meant my surgery. The donor sighed. Not his. Dad's premium insurance covered everything for him. Mine didn't. I walked down the hallway, the pain growing sharper. Family photos lined the walls. Lucas's graduation. Marissa's wedding. Dad beaming in every frame. My college photo was missing. I wondered if he forgot or chose not to include it. That night, I lay awake counting the beats of my heart. Each throb echoed beneath the scar. I'd given him part of myself. And yet, the house felt colder than before. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds. Dad laughed with Marissa on the phone, his voice stronger than I'd heard in months. I stood in the doorway, unnoticed. His smile filled the room. Mine stayed behind my teeth. When he saw me, he waved absently. "Morning, kiddo, you're looking better already." I wanted to say, "I'm still bleeding inside." But instead I said, "Yeah, getting there." He nodded and turned back to his call. For the first time, I wondered if saving him might have cost more than I could afford. Not just in money, but in something far deeper. Something I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. The house was quiet, except for the ticking clock in the hallway. 2 weeks after the surgery, my scar still burned at every breath. I moved slower now, careful with every step. Dad's voice drifted from his study, calm and steady. "Well, keep everything as before the operation," he said. I froze near the door, the words pricking my skin. "Lucas gets the business shares. Marissa gets the trust fund. Elena doesn't need anything. She's already established." My hand trembled against the doorframe. The air in the hallway turned heavy. A second voice replied, older and careful. "Are you certain, Mr. Graham, given recent events?" "Nothing's changed," Dad cut in firmly. "She's fine on her own. The others need security." The sound of paper shuffling followed. My stomach dropped as if the floor had vanished. He had planned this before the surgery. Before the donation. Before I gave him part of my body. I pressed my palm against the wall to stay upright. Pain pulsed through the incision like a warning. The room blurred. I made it back to my bed before the tears came. They didn't stop for hours. That night, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every word. Every smile he'd given me before the operation. Every thank you that now felt hollow. The next morning, Mom announced a family dinner. "The first one since everyone's home," she said brightly. The table was set with the good china. The roast beef steamed in the center. Dad looked strong again, commanding the room. He raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. Lucas grinned, his eyes already on the business ahead. Marissa adjusted her diamond bracelet, glowing with health. "We're trying another IVF round," she said casually. "Now that we know the timing of the inheritance." The words sliced clean through the air. I felt the breath catch in my throat. Inheritance. Timing. It had all been discussed. All planned. "What about my portion?" I asked. The question came out quieter than I meant it to. The table fell still. Forks stopped midair. Dad dabbed at his mouth before answering. "You've got your career, Elena. You don't need our help." He said it gently, like a kindness. It was. I looked at him, this man I had nearly died for. "I see," I whispered. Mom tried to change the subject, but the silence had already settled. After dinner, I stood alone in the kitchen, washing dishes I hadn't used. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, Something inside me broke clean in two. That night, the pain returned sharper than before. Not from the wound, but from the realization. I hadn't saved my father. I had saved a man who would rather see me as convenient than worthy. And that truth cut deeper than any scalpel ever could. The next morning, I found the hospital bills waiting on my desk. $38,742. The numbers blurred as I read them again and again. My savings were gone. My paycheck was gone. Everything I had poured into my family was gone. Dad's insurance covered every penny of his surgery. Mine left me drowning. I walked to his study, clutching the papers in both hands. He looked up from his newspaper, surprised to see me. "Dad, we need to talk about this." I set the bills on his desk. "My insurance didn't cover the donor costs. I need help." He glanced at the total, then folded the page closed. "What do you expect me to do?" His voice was calm, detached. "Help me," I said quietly. "The way you're helping Lucas and Marissa." He frowned, as if I'd insulted him. "I gave you life, Elena. You're keeping score now." My throat tightened. "I gave you mine back," I said. "I just didn't realize it came with conditions." He leaned back, his eyes cold and tired. "You've always been independent, strong. You don't need me." I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. It was understanding. He didn't see me as ungrateful. He saw me as unworthy of help. Because I never asked for it before. Because I'd never failed. That afternoon, I found an old folder in the home office. It was labeled Elena College Fund. Inside were bank statements, emptied years ago. A transfer marked L. Graham Auto Ventures. Lucas's first failed business. My chest tightened as I read. The money meant for my education had gone to rescue him. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty balance. The memories piled up one by one. The loan I gave them when Dad lost his job. The check for Mom's hip surgery. The Christmas repairs on the lake cabin. All of it taken, spent, forgotten. And still, they called me the lucky one. I opened my laptop and searched donor rights laws. Words like coercion and fiduciary responsibility flashed across the screen. I read late into the night, the glow of the monitor painting my face pale blue. For the first time, I wasn't crying. I was calculating. The next morning, I called the family lawyer, Mr. Cross. "I'd like to discuss my father's estate planning," I said. There was a pause on the other end. "I've been meaning to call you," he replied. "Some of your father's recent changes concerned me." My pulse quickened. He asked me to meet him the next day. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window. The scar on my side pulled tight when I straightened my back. It wasn't just a wound anymore. It was a promise to myself. I had spent my life fixing their messes. Now I would finally fix my own. The law office smelled like paper and rain. Mr. Cross slid a folder toward me across the polished desk. "Your father has been busy," he said quietly. Inside were copies of backdated property transfers. The vacation cabin now belonged to Lucas. The trust account under Marissa's name. All dated weeks before my surgery. But I remembered hearing him sign them after. "Is this legal?" I asked. "Barely," he replied. "Possibly fraudulent if the dates were altered." My heart pounded. He wasn't just ungrateful. He was strategic. He'd taken everything while pretending nothing had changed. I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder. Receipts, bank transfers, copies of old checks. $5,000 for the mortgage when he lost his job. $8,000 for Mom's surgery when insurance denied coverage. $3,000 for the cabin repairs last Christmas. "All that money came from me," I said. Mr. Cross studied the papers, tapping his pen. "There's precedent," he said finally. "In several states, donors have sued for financial restitution." I leaned forward. Then we'll file. He nodded slowly. I'll prepare a temporary injunction. We freeze all assets until the court reviews the case. When I signed the documents, my hands didn't shake. The pen felt lighter this time. That night, my phone buzzed. It was Marissa. How could you do this to us? She cried. Dad's devastated. You're destroying our family. I kept folding clothes into my suitcase. I didn't destroy anything, I said. He did. He gave you life, she shouted. And I gave him back his, I replied. But that doesn't mean I owe him mine. The line went silent before she hung up. Minutes later, a new message appeared. It was from Dad's physician. He'd filed an ethics complaint with the hospital board. Your treatment after donation was unacceptable, the message read. The words made me exhale for the first time in days. Someone finally saw it. The next morning, Nurse Marlene called from the transplant center. She offered to testify. We recorded our pre-donation counseling, she said. I warned your father about his duty to support your recovery. Her voice was calm, steady. It sounded like hope. My old boss from Seattle emailed that afternoon. I can't hold your job, he wrote, but I can offer remote work. For the first time, I didn't feel cornered. I felt free. By the end of the week, the court granted the injunction. All property transfers frozen. Lucas's messages turned angry. Marissa's turned pleading. Mom begged me to stop before I tore the family apart. But the truth was, it had been broken long before I fought back. That night, I stood outside the house I grew up in. The porch light flickered, just like always. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like evidence. And this time, I wasn't afraid to use it. The courthouse smelled like old paper and coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed above the crowded hallway. Dad's lawyer approached first, his cologne sharp and smug. Your father wanted me to deliver an offer, he said. He handed me a folder. If you drop all inheritance claims, he'll cover your medical expenses. My fingers tightened on the edge of the paper. He was using my pain as leverage. Consider his health, the lawyer added smoothly. His blood pressure hasn't been stable since this started. I almost laughed. Interesting how his heart mattered again when his money was at risk. Behind him, Lucas pretended to read the bulletin board. When our eyes met, he stepped closer. You're killing him with all this, he hissed. The stress is destroying his kidney function. I met his glare without flinching. Funny, he wasn't this fragile when he rewrote the will. Marissa appeared next, holding a small ultrasound photo. Her eyes red, voice trembling. This is your niece, she said. She'll never know her aunt if you keep doing this. I stared at the blurry image. 6 months ago, that would have broken me. Now it only reminded me why I had to stand firm. The bailiff called. Court was reconvening. Inside, I sat alone at my table. Across the aisle, my family clustered together, whispering. The judge, a woman with gray hair and clear eyes, looked up. We'll hear from the petitioner, she said. I stood. My legs felt steady for the first time in weeks. Mr. Cross placed the projector remote in my hand. The first slide showed a spreadsheet of my financial history. 20 years of transactions. Every time I had saved them. Mortgage payments. Medical bills. Tuition loans. Each number glowed like a wound. Then came the medical records. The incision. The recovery. The chronic pain. This is what I live with, I said. Because I believed family meant something. The courtroom was silent. Next, I showed emails. Dad's promises written in black and white. Everything will be divided equally, sweetheart. We'll make sure you're taken care of. I turned toward him. I didn't donate to buy love. I donated because I had it. The words hung heavy in the air. The judge folded her hands. Mr. Graham, would you like to respond? Dad stood slowly, shoulders hunched. "She's always been independent," he said. "She didn't need." "So you punished her for being strong," the judge cut in. He stammered. Lucas jumped up. "We arranged everything before her surgery." Mr. Cross lifted a document. The revisions were dated 3 days after she was confirmed a match. The judge's tone hardened. "That timing suggests coercion and bad faith." She paused, eyes moving between us. "The court extends the asset freeze and orders a full investigation." For the first time, Dad looked at me, not with anger but with recognition. Maybe even guilt. Minutes later, he clutched his chest. Marissa screamed. Lucas caught him before he fell. Paramedics rushed in. "Come to the hospital," Mom begged. I shook my head. I already gave him what he needed to live. Outside, the autumn air hit my face like freedom. I walked away without looking back. For the first time in years, I was finally breathing on my own. Morning light spilled across my apartment floor. 6 months had passed since the trial. The scar on my side had faded to silver. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like proof that I survived. I worked now for a donor advocacy network. Less money than coding, but more meaning. Every time I helped rewrite a consent form, I healed a little more. Marlene visited often, always bringing laughter and coffee. Henry sent updates about new donor protection laws. My friends called themselves my chosen family. They toasted to second chances and quiet strength. An email arrived that morning. Final settlement approved. Medical bills paid. 1/3 of my father's estate restored. Beside it, another message. Acceptance into a graduate program for medical ethics. I smiled through tears I didn't expect. On my shelf, one photo remained. Dad teaching me to fish when I was 10. I didn't hate him anymore. I simply let him belong to the past. Family, I realized, isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who chooses to see you whole. And I finally chose myself.